All right, let's talk about the EU's AI Act. It's this massive piece of regulation that's reshaping the world of technology. And right at the very heart of it, there's a huge challenge for anyone building what the law calls high-risk artificial intelligence. So that brings us to the big question, right? If you've built one of these complex, high-risk AI systems, how do you actually get the green light to use it in the European Union? Well, I can tell you it's not just about filling out a simple form. It's a journey, a really rigorous one.
You should really think of it as a gauntlet. Before any high-risk AI can be launched, its creator has to run this gauntlet. It's officially called a conformity assessment, to prove, without a doubt, that their system isn't going to harm people's safety or their fundamental rights.
Okay, so let's get into how this actually works. When a company with a high-risk AI starts this whole process, they usually come to a fork in the road. They have a fundamental choice to make between two very different paths to prove they're compliant.
So path one is what's called internal control. This is basically a self-assessment. The AI provider checks their own homework against the law's requirements. Path two, on the other hand, is a third-party assessment. This is way more intense. It means bringing in an independent, outside auditor to verify everything. As you can imagine, these two paths represent very different levels of scrutiny.
Let's look at path one first, the internal check. Now, you might hear self-assessment and think it's the easy way out, but not so fast. While the AI provider is essentially grading their own homework here, the rules they have to follow are incredibly strict.
I mean, that self-assessment has to be unbelievably detailed. The provider has to document their entire risk management plan. They have to prove their data is high quality and not biased. They have to create this massive technical blueprint of the system, and on top of all that, they have to build in real, meaningful human oversight and prove the system is both accurate and secure. So yeah, they're marking their own work, but the test is written by the EU, and it is tough. So, what about path two? This is where things get even more serious. This is the external audit. With this option, an AI provider can't just say they followed the rules. They have to actually prove it to an independent, outside expert. And that expert has a very specific name, a notified body. This is a key term you need to know from the AI Act. A notified body is an independent organization officially appointed by a national government, and it has the deep technical expertise needed to audit these super complex AI systems. You can think of them as the neutral expert referees of this whole gauntlet. And the process here is much more formal, as you'd expect. The provider applies, and then the notified body digs in. They don't just audit the AI's technical files, they audit the provider's entire quality management system. If you pass all of that, you get a certificate. But, and this is a big but, it doesn't stop there. The notified body keeps an eye on you, conducting regular audits to make sure you stay compliant over time.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. While providers often have a choice between these two paths, sometimes they don't. For certain kinds of AI, the law basically says, nope, you don't get to choose the internal path. They are forced to take a mandatory detour down that much tougher external audit route.
So that leads to the obvious question, right? What exactly forces a company's hand? What are the triggers that make this external audit completely non-negotiable?
Well, the Act is very specific about this. A third-party audit becomes mandatory if, for instance, there aren't any established EU-wide technical standards for that type of AI. Basically, if there's no clear, pre-approved playbook for a company to follow, the law says we need an independent expert to come in and make the call.
But beyond all those technical reasons, there's one more trigger that is, you could argue, the most important of them all. And it applies to AI systems being used in some of the most sensitive parts of our public life.
And here it is, right from the Act itself. If a high-risk AI system is going to be used by law enforcement, or by immigration or asylum authorities, the audit isn't just mandatory, the auditor is the government's own market surveillance authority, which is often the country's data protection agency.
So, why is this such a big deal? Because it creates the highest possible level of public accountability you can imagine. For any AI that has the power to decide someone's freedom or their future, the EU has made a clear choice. The final check has to be done by a public body whose entire job is to protect citizens' rights. This all brings us to one last really crucial idea. Getting that initial approval, that certificate, that is not the finish line, not even close. For technology like AI, which is designed to change and learn, compliance isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous loop. The Act introduces this critical concept of a substantial modification. So what is that? It's any change you make to the AI after it's been approved that could mess with its compliance or fundamentally change what it was originally designed to do.
This timeline really shows you what that means. So your AI gets approved and you launch it. But then down the line, you make a substantial change. Maybe you swap out a core algorithm or retrain it on a totally new kind of data. You can't just push an update. Nope. You have to go all the way back to the starting line and run the entire gauntlet, all over again.
Now, there is one really important exception here. For AI systems that are literally designed to learn and evolve over time, the company can actually get ahead of this. They can document these planned changes during the initial assessment, and if the AI changes in a way that was already anticipated and approved, it doesn't trigger a new review. This is a smart rule. It allows for innovation, but it keeps it within pre-approved guardrails.
And this leaves us with the billion-dollar question for regulators and innovators. In a world where AI's whole purpose is to learn and adapt, what's the real dividing line between a simple update and a substantial modification? Answering that question is going to be at the very heart of regulating this incredible technology for years to come.